can I share what it was like at the beginning of lockdown? It was a time of aloneness, anxiousness, and even feeling afraid, but also one of new opportunities. The privilege of knocking on nearly every patient's ward door and simply saying, "Can I help you in any way? Can I get you a drink from the fridge? Can I sit and listen, have a chat? We can laugh or sing softly? Or could I unlock the door for your visitor coming? Or I'll find occasions where I stood with grieving relatives in the courtyard, in gardens, and even the car park."
Hello everyone at conference. My name is Jackie White and I'm one of the chaplains at Northern Ireland Hospice. I had to shield for the first 3 months of the pandemic and thankfully was able to come back in after that. While I was shielding, I concentrated on contacting my colleagues and the staff at the hospice and seeing what level of support I could offer them. And most of them, by a very high percentage of them, came back to me and gave me prayer requests. Most of those prayer requests, in fact, I think all of those prayer requests were to do with personal and family circumstances. Not any of them were actually to do with work. And it was evident that stress was a big issue for them.
Hello, my name is Martin and I lead the Sparks team at the Dougie Mac Hospice in Stoke-on-Trent. Sparks stands for Spiritual, Pastoral and Religious Care Service. Like you, I've faced many challenges over the last year. Some I've managed to respond to creatively, some are still ongoing challenges and I work with them on a daily basis. For example, I found one of the big challenges has been the change to our hospice community. When lockdown started, immediately our volunteers were stood down. And it made me realise just how much vitality and how much life volunteers bring into our organisation. And we miss them, and we're hoping that actually now that things are changing, people will start to come back. But also, I'm aware, talking to the volunteers in the Sparks team, that actually quite a few of them won't come back and can't come back, and that's a sadness. The fact that our patient numbers have dropped in the last year, not least of which because our day therapy unit has closed, is a change to the atmosphere. Again, the vitality and life that those people bring into our environment every day. Like many organisations, our hospice had to furlough, to redeploy and to make redundant, and that's changed the atmosphere.
This last year at the hospice, like for many, has been both challenging and also a huge privilege. I want to tell you about two people who made a huge impact on me and the way I worked during lockdown. Before the first lockdown last March, I was involved in the community supporting a young lady. We spent a lot of time together talking about her advanced care planning and her end-of-life wishes. She had thought a lot about this and had planned special days out with her family and friends to help them make memories of her and the time with her. Her funeral was to be a celebration of her life with all her different friends taking part. She deteriorated quickly and came into the hospice just after the first lockdown began. It soon became apparent that she would be unable to fulfil any of her wishes due to the strict COVID restrictions. This was exceedingly difficult for her family and her friends, especially as the visiting rules were very restricted at that time. Just before she died, she said to me, "I feel as if my death will be insignificant. I will just be another number read out daily." This conversation had a huge impact on me. It made me think that behind every number there is a person with family and friends, a person with their own life story. It also made me think that people are not just dying of COVID, but many other diseases and illnesses, and all should be remembered.
But there were many privileges working in the multidisciplinary team. hearing a doctor from a non-faith background say, as a chaplain, you can do more for this patient now at this stage of end of life than I can do. What an encouragement. What a privilege it was to serve in chaplaincy in lockdown.
There's of course been the challenge to practice. The introduction of barriers such as PPE, the restrictions on touch, although brought in for a positive reason, have changed how we as a staff do things, how I as an individual do things. And that's been a challenge as well. There's been the challenge that the visiting restrictions have brought, the sadness of seeing people die alone when they didn't want to, the challenge of having people isolated from those who are dear to them. I remember a patient saying to me, Martin, I probably won't ever see my family together again. And she was right, because the time that open visiting came round, she was unconscious and she didn't get to see her family, and that's a sadness. And part of our challenge, therefore, has been learning how to deal with that sadness in a way that neither destroys us nor causes us to ignore it and pretend that there's nothing wrong. There is something wrong. It's not the way that we would normally choose to do things. It's not the healthy way to do things. It's not the humane way to do things. And our staff have risen to these challenges partly through being creative, whether that's through making sure that every patient has their own electronic tablet so that they can talk to those who are dear to them on a daily basis, or whether it's through working especially hard to make sure that the atmosphere feels as normal as possible, particularly at times like Christmas and New Year, when the separation of us from our families and loved ones is even more acute.
I also, during the pandemic, managed to carry out or participate in a unit of clinical pastoral education conducted for the local chaplains here, and that was intense but very helpful, and I feel it's been very helpful in a professional sense for me in my work here.
There's been personal challenges for me as well. I talked about the vitality that volunteers bring in. Well, one of the other things they bring in for me is that they share the work, and without them the workload has increased over the last year, and therefore there's been the challenge of meeting that workload and at the same time making sure that I'm practicing good self-care. But the other thing that the volunteers bring into me is that they reduce that sense of isolation. I think sometimes having a team of one employed person can make you more vulnerable to isolation anyway. But this year, when departments have been forbidden from mixing with each other because of infection restriction, it's felt even more so. And it's difficult not to have moved from being a lone worker to a lonely worker. And then of course there's the challenges of the fact that, like all of the healthcare staff, at the end of my working day, I'm not put in a cupboard and the cupboard shut and then I'm brought out fresh the next day. Like all healthcare staff, there's a home life. As well as dealing with the effects of the COVID situation on myself, I'm also dealing with the effects of COVID situation on those at home that I care about.
The second family that had an impact on me was a family with 4 daughters. Their mum had come into the hospice during lockdown to die. The visiting restrictions at the time were 2 family members only at the end of life. The family had decided which daughter would be able to come in with their dad, a hard decision for any family to make. Members of our local community had knitted small red hearts for us to use at the hospice. I was able to give each daughter a red heart, along with one for their mum. I spoke to one daughter after their mum died, and she told me that her mum never let go of her heart and they buried it with her. She told me the red hearts had made each of them feel connected to their mum, even though they could not physically be there, and that nearly a year later each daughter still has their heart beside their bed. COVID has highlighted a greater need for spiritual care and remembrance at a time when the usual comforts associated with end-of-life care have been stripped away.
And if there's one of the unspokens in the public discourse this year, it seems to me that it's about the fact that healthcare staff have all of these issues, as well as working in vulnerable and emotionally charged atmospheres. It's difficult.
Hello, my name's Keith Judson. I've always admired the ideal of seeking to live fully in the present moment, to not dwell on past regrets or worry about the future. It's a wisdom we find in many spiritual traditions, and of course in recent years has been popularised through the practice of mindfulness. My song is inspired by that ideal and by the hope we can find, whatever hardships we're going through, in the loving presence of someone who's prepared to be fully present to us. I hope you'll enjoy the song. I'd like to dedicate it to the wonderful people I work with at the Mary Stevens Hospice in Stourbridge.
Say no more for now, in the time allowed. No need to wonder how we'll meet again. Hold my hand once more, that's what hands are for. When your heart is sore and filled with pain, may you live with no regret at yesterday's mistakes and sorrow. Nor be afraid of what tomorrow brings. May love hold you through today, banish fears the night throws at you. I pray you'll find your song and that you'll sing, that you'll sing. Hear the music play, see the light of day. Though it's dark and may be silent here, taste the love we share, touch and know I care. Breathe the morning air so fresh and clear. May you live with no regret at yesterday's mistakes and sorrow. Nor be afraid of what tomorrow brings. May love hold you through today, banish fears the night throws at you. I pray you'll find your song and that you'll sing, that you'll sing. I don't have answers to your questions, to the why and when and where, for the aching and the longing, just my promise to be there. Say no more for now, in the time allowed. No need to wonder how we'll meet again. Hold my hand once more, that's what hands are for. When your heart is sore and filled with pain, may you live with no regret at yesterday's mistakes and sorrow. Nor be afraid of what tomorrow brings. May love hold you through today, banish fears the night throws at you. I pray you'll find your song and that you'll sing, that you'll sing, that you'll sing, that you'll sing.